So welcome again, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We will go over a few logistical items before we get started with the training. We'll start sharing our slides. So I'll provide an introduction to the 4 organizations that are co-hosting this event. But first, we'd like to make sure that you have all information about how to participate in this training. On the next slide, you'll see some guidance on how to enable closed captioning. So you can look at the bottom ribbon of your screen and click on the closed caption button, and you can click on live transcript or show subtitle. Please know that the captions are only available in English. If you need to move the position of the box, if it's blocking part of your screen, you're able to drag the box and move it to another place on your screen. It's great to see that some of you have started introducing yourself in the chat, so please continue to do so. We encourage you to share your name, location, organization, and pronouns. I will begin with an introduction of the organizations that are bringing this training to you. My name is Roxy Keynes, and I work with the Get It Back campaign, which is a project of the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. We are a national effort to connect eligible people to tax benefits, and we promote refundable tax credits like the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit, and free tax preparation and other tax benefits. We work with a diverse network of partners, and we welcome you to join us. We also have the Coalition on Human Needs co-hosting this event. The Coalition on Human Needs is an alliance of national groups that includes service providers, faith groups, policy experts, and labor, civil rights, and other advocates. All of these groups work together to advocate at the federal level to meet the needs of people with low incomes and increase knowledge of positive outcomes from current or proposed programs. The Coalition on Human Needs works closely with Partnership for America's Children, which has over 50 members that are focused on multiple issues related to child advocacy. And their mission is to support its network of state and community child advocacy organizations in effective advocacy. And we have Code for America bringing this training to you as well. And Code for America comprises of a group of people who are people-centered problem solvers that are looking to show how the mindful use of technology can help make government work well for everyone. So we're all happy to have you here today. So for today's session, we will provide an overview about the child tax credit. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page about the child tax credit and why it's important. We'll explore the GetCTC.org platform and the different roles for helping people as navigators. We'll have a chance to explore outreach and action and some of the ways that people have successfully helped connect people to the child tax credit and help connect people to ways to use GetCTC.org. You'll have a chance to hear from 2 organizations later on. And then we always want to share resources with you so that you are well equipped to adapt this work in your local community. So we'll share resources and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. Please feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat or the Q&A box, and we will answer them during the Q&A session. We will have some people available that will try to respond to questions quickly by chat. The others will save for the Q&A. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jenny Wong, to provide an overview about the child tax credit.
Thank you, Roxy. And I see one question. Yes, this is being recorded. So I will be covering the child tax credit and the other benefits that you can receive from using GetCTC.org. Next slide. So under the American Rescue Plan, the child tax credit was recently expanded for tax year 2021. So the child tax credit is a federal tax credit that is intended to help with the cost of raising children. And in 2021, which you know now, the credit is worth up to $3,600 for children less than 6 years old, and $3,000 for children between the ages of 6 and 17. Oh, is my audio really bad? Is this helping if I get a little closer? Next slide, please. In terms of eligibility, almost every family is eligible for this tax credit. I'm going to just get closer and see if that's helping, because I'm seeing that folks are still having issues. So almost every household is eligible for the child tax credit, including families that do not have any recent income and have not filed taxes recently. So in terms of the parents or guardians, they must have either a social security number or an individual taxpayer number. They can claim the child tax credit as long as their child has a social security number. Next slide. There are a few rules for who can claim, for which children can be claimed for the child tax credit. So the child must be your child, grandchild, stepchild, adopted child, or younger sibling, or their descendant, or a foster child placed with you by a government agency. The child must live with you in the US for more than half the year, though there is an exception for non-custodial parents, and the child must be 17 or under on December 31st, 2021. As mentioned before, the child claimed for the child tax credit must have a valid social security number, and they cannot provide more than half of their own support. And finally, the child must be considered a dependent for tax filing purposes. So this expansion on the child tax credit was, of course, very exciting. So many people in 2021 received half of the child tax credit as an advance payment. So for those people who received the credit as an advance payment, they must file their taxes or use GetCTC.org to get the second half of their payment. For those who did not receive advance payments, they will get the full tax credit when they either file their tax return or use GetCTC, which is a simplified tax return as well. The credit is worth a lot more than it was previously. It was previously worth up to $2,000 per child, and you were required to have earnings in order to get the refund as well. Another thing that is important to know about the child tax credit this year is for folks who did get the advance payments, they received letter 6419, which says how much money they received in 2021. And that document is important for getting the second half of their payment. Next slide. The other credit that you can claim when you use GetCTC.org is the third stimulus check. So in about spring of 2021, the third stimulus check was issued, and it was worth up to $1,400 for each eligible adult and person within the household. And for anyone who did not get either the full or we did not get their full payment in 2021, they can get the rest or the full credit now when they use GetCTC.org. And like with the child tax credit, the IRS issued letter 6475, which has the amount that they think you received in your third stimulus check. Next slide, please. The eligibility for the third stimulus check is also very similar to the child tax credit. So there is no income requirement, though the stimulus check amount does phase out at higher incomes. In addition, any family member or dependent that has a social security number can receive the payment. The person filing cannot be a dependent of anyone else, and they must be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or qualifying alien. There are a couple other tax credits that families may qualify for, though they will have to file a full tax return to get these benefits. So the first one that's important to mention is the Earned Income Tax Credit, otherwise known as the EITC. So the EITC is another federal tax credit. It's really money that can provide money or lower federal taxes. So this tax credit was expanded along with the child tax credit for tax year 2021. And the important thing to note is that this credit was tripled for workers who are not raising children. So it is for 2021 worth up to about $1,500 for workers not raising children. In addition, those who are 19 to 24 and 65 plus who are not raising children are newly eligible for this credit as long as they are not a student. And in addition to that, folks who are 18 years of age who are homeless or former foster youth also qualify. Next slide. And then another tax benefit that folks may qualify for is the Child and Dependent Care Credit. So this credit is a federal tax credit that helps families pay for expenses for either their child or adult care while they are either working or looking for work. So this credit is worth up to $4,000 for one child under 13, or $8,000 for two or more children under 13. And the amount really does depend on how many dependents you have in your care, your income, and the amount that you pay for the year. And what's new and important about this credit is that it is increased quite a bit from previously, and it is refundable. So in the past, you would only have your taxes reduced. And I'm sorry, I'm seeing that the audio is still kind of cutting in and out. Is that still happening with it a bit?
Yes, it's really bad.
I'm sorry, I am almost done. And then on the next slide, you'll see another benefit is the Affordable Connectivity Program. So you do qualify for this. Many generally qualify as long as their household income is under 200% of the federal poverty line. And the benefits include up to a $30 a month discount on internet service or a $75 a month discount if the household is on qualifying tribal lands. And with that, I will turn it over to Courtney, and while I'm off screen, I will see if I can find some earbuds to make this better.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney O'Reilly. I'm the Senior Program Manager with Code for America. And as we already mentioned, Code for America is a nonprofit organization that partners with government to strengthen the delivery of public service through human-centered technology. And one of the ways we try to achieve that is through the tax benefits system. So excited to be here to talk with you all today. Next slide. And so most of you who have tuned in probably realize that we've already gone past the end of the official tax filing season. And despite that fact, our work really has just begun this year in reaching those who haven't yet filed a tax return. Most filers with low incomes can still file without any penalty in order to claim the benefits Jenny was just talking about. Many of our free filing services are open between now through October or November, depending on which service they choose. And this off-season really gives us an opportunity to reach those who don't currently see themselves as filers and give them new options to claim some or all of their benefits. Next slide. Perfect. And the first thing I want to do is just clarify some of the differences between filing a full tax return and a simplified return, because this can definitely be confusing. And we want to make sure everybody is clear on what we mean when we talk about simplified filing or full filing. The first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about full filing. So the services available to help somebody file a full tax return is Get Your Refund, which is a virtual VITA service, File Myself, which uses do-it-yourself software. And we also have a VITA site locator on our website, Get Your Refund. We will dive into all of these services in more detail. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about with any of those, don't worry, we'll get there. For full filing, folks are able to file a federal and state tax return, depending on what state they live in. They can file prior year tax returns, which is helpful for those who haven't filed for a number of years and qualify for past benefits. And they can claim all of their tax benefits. These services are typically eligible for people under $58,000 to $73,000, depending on the service that they choose. That's why there's a difference there. And it mostly relies on VITA's capacity, which will be very limited in this post-filing season. They also require tax documents in order to file a full tax return. And for those who are using VITA services, they will be required to show different forms of IDs, which we know can be challenging. The process, depending on what they choose, can take up to 3 to 8 weeks to complete the process. And we just know through our services that generally people who come to Get Your Refund have a low completion rate. With simplified filing, which is offered through GetCTC, you are filing a federal return. And it's important to note that with simplified filing, you are filing a federal tax return. It isn't signing up for something else. It is filing a tax return saying you don't make or you make under the filing requirement. And by filing this simplified federal return, you are able to claim any of your child tax credit and your third stimulus payment. We are exploring the option of how to include EITC, but as of right now, that is not available through GetCTC. It is only available for families who are not required to file a tax return. So that's for folks who make less than $12,550 if you're counting for single individuals, or $25,100 for those who are married filing jointly. It also is, folks have to make less than $400 in self-employment income, which includes things like driving for a rideshare company, doing deliveries, those type of things. And you can't have the premium tax credit through the healthcare exchange. Some of the benefits of simplified filing are that there are no capacity constraints. Filers are not waiting on volunteers to prepare their return. They're preparing it themselves. They also don't have to provide any tax or ID documents in order to do it. And it typically takes clients about 10 to 15 minutes to complete the process. And we've seen much higher completion rates with the simplified filing. And next slide. And so the simplified filing tool for GetCTC, just want to be really clear about what it is. And it is a streamlined way for folks to e-file a return to claim their child tax credit and third stimulus payment, as long as they don't have a filing requirement. And that's really key here. The tool is available in English and Spanish. It is also mobile and user-friendly. And as I just said, most clients will be able to finish this process in less than 15 minutes. VITA certified chat support, and I saw somebody is not familiar with VITA. VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. So people who are trained through an IRS program will be available to help answer more complicated questions if they need it. And once they're in the tool, they're offered the option to file a full tax return through Get Your Refund. We know a lot of people out there are very anxious about sending somebody to a tool that can only get them some of their benefits, but we do make it very apparent that they are using a simplified tool that can only get them some and give them the option and empower them to choose if they want to file a full tax return. Next slide. And so who can and should use getctc.org? So we have a number of eligibility requirements here. One of the good things is none of you have to memorize this. This is just informational. Our tool has some initial triaging questions to make sure that they qualify, that this is the right tool for them. But for you to know, filers must have a valid Social Security number or individual taxpayer identification number, known as an ITIN. They cannot have filed a 2021 tax return since they are filing a 2020 tax return through the simplified process. They must make less than that filing requirement amount. They must earn less than that $400 in self-employment income. And they must live in the 50 states or DC, or use or live in a US military facility. And they must not have advanced premium tax credits that they need to reconcile. Who should use this tool? So these are folks who need to claim either the second half of their child tax credit if they were getting advance payments, or those who didn't receive advance payments last year and need to file for the full credit. This tool is also available for people who've missed the third stimulus payment. So regardless if they had a qualifying child in their household, if they have not received their third stimulus payment, they can use this tool to claim that credit. And we know GetCTC is very branded for families with children, as the name indicates, but we do have a landing page that talks more about the third stimulus payment. So if you're doing outreach to individuals without children, that might be the good landing page to send them to. And I believe my colleague will be able to drop that in the chat so you can all see what that looks like. The next slide. And so now we are actually going to show you a recorded demo of going through the tool. Just a heads up that we'll be playing it at 3/4 of the speed. Just to make sure that we get all the information in there. And so I'll hand it over, or I'll mute myself as we watch this recorded demo. And so I'm sorry, I don't know if this is the case for everybody else, but I can't hear the sound.
I'm so sorry. Give me just a moment. Let's start that over.
This video will show you how to use the 2022 edition of Code for America's simplified tax filing portal, GetCTC. GetCTC allows families without a tax filing obligation to file a simplified 2021 tax return to access the child tax credit and the third stimulus payment. GetCTC e-files a simplified return directly with the IRS. It's mobile-friendly, accessible, available in both English and Spanish, and chat assistance is available at any point in the process. People without children can use it too, just to access the third stimulus payment. This is what GetCTC looks like at our launch in May 2022. Note that we constantly update the tool in response to user feedback, so it may look a little different later in the year. First, GetCTC will go through a few steps to confirm that it's the right tool for me. The tool asks first how I'm filing my return, single or married. Then the tool confirms that the IRS allows me to use simplified filing, since households with higher incomes or other special circumstances, like self-employment income, are required to file a full return. If, for example, I'm not sure what counts as self-employment income, additional information is available below. GetCTC will then warn me that I could get even more money by filing a full return, since I can't get the EITC or state credits from this tool. To get the first two stimulus payments, I would have to file a 2020 tax return. Those who choose to file a full return or back taxes are sent to Get Your Refund, which allows families to file using Vita services. For now, I'll opt to continue with this tool. Next, GetCTC will ask me a few other questions to confirm I'm eligible to use the tool. It lists a few additional and rare scenarios that GetCTC does not support, and will ask whether I already filed a 2021 return this year. If I already submitted a return, the IRS would reject a new one I filed through this tool. Then, GetCTC will confirm I lived in the 50 states, DC, or a U.S. military facility last year, since overseas and territory residents are currently not eligible to use simplified filing. Finally, it will confirm that no one can claim me as a dependent, since that would make me ineligible for the CTC and stimulus checks. I've now confirmed I'm eligible to use GetCTC. In the next section, GetCTC asks for some basic information about me. I'll enter my name, date of birth, and social security number. Note that I could also enter an ITIN. As required by the IRS, GetCTC asks for my phone number. It also asks if I was a member of the armed forces in 2021, since that could impact the amount of my recovery rebate credit. As required by the IRS, GetCTC asks if I am legally blind. Finally, GetCTC asks me to agree to the privacy policy. Then the tool will check if I filed a 2020 return. If I did, GetCTC would collect my 2020 adjusted gross income, which the IRS requires from filers for authentication purposes. In this case, I'll say that I didn't file last year. On this page, we ask clients the contact method we can use to best reach them. Note, GetCTC does not require clients to create an account and does not require them to have an email address. Clients simply have to sign up using their email or their phone. In this case, I'll choose to sign up by phone. GetCTC will send me a 6-digit code that I must enter to confirm it's mine. For the purposes of this demo, I'll enter a fake code on this page. Note that if I don't finish my return in one sitting, I can log back in and continue using this contact method. Next, if I were filing married, GetCTC would collect needed information about my spouse, their name, date of birth, social security number or ITIN, and 2020 adjusted gross income, if applicable. In this case, I'm filing single, so GetCTC will skip this section. In the next section, GetCTC allows me to list my 2021 dependents. Rather than assume I've read all the tax rules, GetCTC asks me all the key questions I need to answer to make sure I can claim my dependents. Keep in mind that the pages clients see in this section very much depend on the answers they provide. First, I'll enter my dependent's basic information: name, date of birth, relationship to me, and SSN or ATIN. We ask about one specific scenario to confirm basic eligibility. Next, GetCTC will ask me to confirm a few more criteria. If at any point my dependent doesn't meet the main criterion, GetCTC will ask whether one or more valid exceptions apply. Behind the scenes, GetCTC will determine which credits my dependent is eligible for. Finally, GetCTC will show me a list of my dependents, including whether they are eligible for CTC or only for the third stimulus payment. I can keep repeating this process until all my dependents are recorded. For now, I'll say I only have one dependent. In the next section, GetCTC will determine my credit amounts. First, GetCTC will figure out how much CTC I can claim. The IRS requires families to report how much advanced CTC they received last year and subtract this from their total credit. GetCTC makes this process easier by calculating how much families should have received based on the dependents they provided earlier. I can say that I got this amount, a different amount, or no payment at all. In this case, I'll say I got the estimated amount. GetCTC calculates the remaining CTC available to me. Next, GetCTC will figure out how much recovery rebate credit I can claim, that is, the third stimulus payment. As with the CTC, the IRS requires families to report how much they received last year. Again, GetCTC will display how much I should have received based on my family structure. In this case, I'll say I got a different amount. GetCTC will ask me to enter what I received and provide some tips about where to find this information. I'll say in this case that I received $200. GetCTC will then let me review the amount I'm claiming. Finally, GetCTC will collect my payment information and allow me to review and submit my return. I can select direct deposit or a mailed check. In this case, I'll select direct deposit. GetCTC asks me to confirm that my name is on the bank account, so the payment is not rejected. I'll provide my routing number and my account number. And finally, we'll have the chance to confirm my information. The IRS also requires that I provide my mailing address. GetCTC allows me to enter identity protection pins for anyone in my family who has one, and provides more information about what an IP pin is. I'll say that no one in my family has an IP pin. Now, I can review all the information I've submitted and go back to edit anything that's wrong. On this page, as required by the IRS, I set a 5-digit PIN that I can use to authenticate when I file next year. On the next page, I'll see a final summary of the payments I am claiming. Next, I have the option to submit my driver's license information and my spouse's if I were filing married. Especially for clients without a tax filing history, the IRS may process returns and issue refunds faster if this information is submitted, and we recommend clients provide it if possible, but it is not required. If I don't have a driver's license or don't want to provide the information, I can skip this page. Finally, I'll agree to our terms on the last page, and I'll file. Just like that, I've filed my simplified return. GetCTC will alert me within a couple days whether my return has been accepted or rejected by the IRS. Most clients hear within a few hours. If my return was rejected, GetCTC will provide me with a plain language explanation of why, and allow me to log back in and resubmit my return. You can find GetCTC at getctc.org. For more resources about the CTC and stimulus payments, visit getctc.org/navigators.
Perfect. And Zoe, would you mind resharing the slides? Perfect. And for those of you who don't know, this is actually our second year of running or of operating GetCTC. And last year when we ran GetCTC for the first time, we learned a lot. Some of the key takeaways that I want to call out are that simplified filing was generally a success. It reached a lot of folks who were unable to use a full process, but were able to successfully complete a simplified process. In fact, over 115,000 individuals were able to get an accepted return through GetCTC in about 10 weeks. And 78% found the tool easy or extremely easy to use, which includes first-time filers. And the typical experience was that most people were able to finish in 10 minutes on their mobile phone. And over 95% did not request any additional assistance through chat or a recorded Navigator. And this really kind of begins to change the calculus for tax benefits outreach. For many, sending people to a simplified tool like GetCTC, outreach alone may be enough for simplified filing, when we have learned year over year that it isn't enough for full filing, that there needs to be other types of assistance when you are sending somebody to a full filing service. I do want to call out, though, that GetCTC was a simple tool embedded in a very complicated tax system. We know many people came to GetCTC who were not able to complete a simplified return because of other circumstances that outside of a simplified tax return. It could have been that their dependent was already claimed by somebody else. It could be that they weren't able to access their prior payments that they received, or a previous adjusted gross income. There were a lot of other barriers that made this a challenging situation. And navigators can be a huge difference in helping somebody maybe not use a simplified tool, but access the right resources that can help them finish their filing process and get access to their credits. And next slide. And one thing I just want to pause here to say is that this money is really meaningful for families. I don't think anybody on this call doesn't understand this, but I think when we talk about 115,000 filers, we forget the individual impact it has. And this quote is from Trish, one of the first filers we worked with to file a simplified return. This is money that families like Trish can reinvest in our communities. They can help pay for essential needs like childcare or transportation, invest in education, and even start a business. In all of our tax benefits work, we are focused on ensuring that all families are able to access the tax benefits they deserve, but especially those most likely to be at risk of missing out, which is why we wanted to create a simplified filing tool in the first place. And right, next slide. And so with this, sorry, my pages just went all blank. Some things I do want to call out and remind everybody again, that while GetCTC offers a lot of benefits and opportunities, it does have its limitations. And a reminder, GetCTC cannot help clients claim their earned income tax credits, any state credits, or the first and second stimulus payment this year. GetCTC is also not currently available to Puerto Rico residents, but we should have some new information in coming soon about the possibility of offering this tool to Puerto Rico residents. GetCTC cannot help someone apply for an ITIN. So for many of the families who are missing out on their credits, this is not going to allow them to apply for an individual taxpayer identification number. Next slide. But for those that are encountering those other issues, either they need to claim other additional benefits, they need to apply for an ITIN, whatever it may be, there are other services available to help them file a full tax return. And on this chart, I know it can be a bit overwhelming, so apologies for that. But we do have this chart specifically available in a PDF on our Navigator page so that you can print it and keep it with you. But just want to call out a couple of these services. And the first is the Get Your Refund full service through Virtual VITA. So Get Your Refund conducts a digital intake and then remotely pairs clients with a VITA program or Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program to complete the process of filing a state and federal tax return. Each client will work one-on-one with a volunteer to complete their return, which clients do love. However, due to the limitations of volunteer capacity for this service, especially in the off-season, the process can take longer and may not be available in all locations at that time. One service that is available without those capacity constraints is the File Myself option, which connects clients to TaxSlayer's free tax filing software, where they can prepare their own federal and state tax return. Clients can use Get Your Refund chat support or reach out to us via email to get help completing this return. This service is also known as Facilitated Self-Assistance, FSA, Do It Yourself, kind of comes with a whole host of names, and is the same software that is used by myfreetaxes.com, which is another great resource. We also, as I said, have a VITA site locator to help folks find if there are any in-person services. But again, just want to call out that the capacity for these locations is quite limited in the off-season, and there aren't as many operating throughout the country. The next slide. And so when you're working with folks in the community, I just want to call out who might be a really good Get Your Refund virtual VITA client or in-person client. And it's important for them to know what they need in order to file a full tax return through Get Your Refund. The first is they'll need all of their tax documents. So W-2s, 1099s, everything they might get that they need to file claim on their tax return. They'll need their photo ID and a copy of their social security card or ITIN letter for every member of the household. If they're doing the virtual service, that may take about 3 to 8 weeks for them to for their return to be e-filed, and they must participate in 2 separate phone calls. They should feel comfortable using a smartphone while doing this process. And this is a good service if they have more complicated tax situations. So let's say they need to file for multiple tax years, or they need to apply for an ITIN. The next slide. And for File Myself, they will still need access to their tax documents, but they only need to know the social security or ITIN number. They don't actually need to use the card. They should have an email address, and they should feel comfortable using a computer or tablet. While the service is available on a mobile device, we just know it can be a little burdensome to do a full tax return on a mobile phone. This is also good if they have a filing requirement or are eligible to other benefits. One key thing to note with File Myself is that it can only file the current tax year return, which is 2021. The next slide. And so one thing I just want to call out that outreach to new or intermittent filers, as we call them, can be complicated. And I know I've seen a few conversations about this in the chat already. We want folks to claim all of their eligible benefits. We got into this work initially to help people claim their earned income tax credit. And we know the GetCTC simplified tool doesn't do that. But we also know with full service filing, outreach alone is not enough. And so if you're sending somebody to a full service option, it's important to make sure they have additional assistance in order to complete that process. But with express filing, outreach alone may be enough to get them across that finish line. A single text message to a qualifying individual can do the trick, while with full service, that might not just be possible. GetCTC's triage questions helps prompt clients to file a full tax return if that's in their best interest. I think one thing that's important with sending folks to GetCTC, in my mind, is it empowers the individual to choose what service is best for them by giving them the option to file a full tax return or continue with a simplified filing process. Folks are going to be able to say, yeah, I might qualify for other benefits, but I can't, I've tried doing that and it doesn't work, and be able to continue with a simplified process. Or they may just be hearing about these credits for the first time and say, yeah, let me try filing a full tax return. Which is why we want most people in the off season, knowing the limited capacity of VITA programs and other resources, to send people to GetCTC to empower individuals to make the right choice for them. And next slide. With that, we know that some folks are going to need additional assistance, which is where navigators come in. And last year, we identified 2 different types of navigators and 2 different options in helping connect clients to those tax benefits. Next slide. And the first of those are what we call community connectors. And this is really all about providing outreach and access. We know awareness and trust are key hurdles for marginalized clients, and many clients are particularly fearful of the IRS. Navigators can bring comfort and validation to the process, especially if they are directly or indirectly associated with trusted community institutions or partners. Just by sharing this tool with them, a trusted partner that they use for other services might make all of the difference to them in filing a tax return to claim some of their benefits. It's also important to help folks access online tools. While most people will be able to finish it on a smartphone on their own, we know there are many folks in the digital divide who cannot access this website or a smartphone to complete the process. And so by targeting those populations, you can do a tremendous amount of good in serving them. While the tool is available in English and Spanish, it is not available in many other languages that folks need in order to complete the process. And so we're really hopeful that groups out there that are working with folks who speak other languages will be able to offer some of those interpretation services in person or over the phone. And then after they've completed a GetCTC tool, we know there are some issues that come up after submitting that tax return. We found last year, and Jenny brought this up in her presentation, was that many new filers were asked after they filed a return, they received a letter a few weeks afterwards from the IRS asking them to verify their identity further. Getting a letter from the IRS can be scary, it can be intimidating. The letters often are not in the clearest language. They may think that they actually don't qualify for this credit and just may have some additional questions. By explaining to them what the letter means and helping them complete their next steps, you can make the difference in them not only filing a simplified return, but actually claiming their benefits. Strongly encourage you, if you have access to this population and are serving them, that this is one of the services you can provide. Because folks have to state how much they received in advanced child tax credit payments or their third stimulus payment in order to file a simplified return, they may just not get it right. It's hard to know exactly how much they received over a year ago at this point, or close to a year ago at this point, and may not get that number exactly right. If that happens, the IRS will adjust their refund amount and they'll get a letter that explains that adjustment. What I found from my previous VITA experience was that many people were very confused by the letters and thought they did something wrong. And while the IRS was adjusting it, they may still qualify for other benefits. So helping them understand what that letter means and how that changes their refund will be crucial to most communities. With this type of assistance, there is no training or certification required. You can help your community get started by just doing that simple amount of outreach, referring people to the tool, helping answer simple questions. And if more complicated questions come up, escalating it to what we call advanced assisters, which is the next group of navigators we've identified. And so next slide. And so advanced assisters are those who have done a bit more research, have done a bit more work to understand kind of the ecosystem of the tax world. So it may be helping clients log into their IRS account. By logging into their IRS account, they're able to access their 2020 adjusted gross income, which is a requirement in filing a return if they filed last year. They can see how much the IRS has recorded them receiving in advanced child tax credit payments and any amount of their third stimulus payment that they received. Assisting those unable to complete a simplified return. So if somebody doesn't qualify for GetCTC, either because they already filed a 2021 tax return or their dependent has already been claimed, there are steps that can be taken to remedy that situation. It's just a lot more complicated, I'm going to say that. We have guides available in helping somebody get through what happens if a dependent's already been claimed. And so helping them understand filing a paper return is the most common step of all, is again, just a crucial service for those serving folks on the ground. It may be that you also want to connect them to full filing resources and provide some of the initial assistance that they need in order to be successful. And so we have guides about doing a File Myself support site or a Get Your Refund support site, whichever works best for that individual client. With this, we do encourage some additional training and resources to better understand the process, which we will be providing throughout the summer. Next slide. And again, just a few from last year's work, we got a lot of information about navigators that I'll be frank, I was surprised about. So the first one, and this is really important, with simplified filing, most clients do not need navigation to file successfully. I think it was incredible the amount of partners and groups that came out last year to try and help folks on the ground, on phone banks, chat, whatever it may be. And what we found was, again, that 95% of people didn't need this additional assistance. But it's important to target clients who may face additional barriers, like those without access to the internet and those with who need language interpretation to use the tool. It's also important to note that it's hard to find a high concentration of the right population, which is why you should consider going to very focused areas. And that might be working with early childhood education centers, with groups that serve homeless individuals. It might be with those who are in reentry programs who have missed out on the stimulus payments. Overall, we hope folks will consider what we call a broad and shallow approach, which just means that to spread out the resources as much as possible, to create coalitions of groups who may just be reaching 5 to 10 folks throughout the season. Because there's no high concentration, it's important to just kind of extend this throughout your communities in whatever way you can. Another key point that we saw a lot of people do, which made sense to me originally, but we've learned from since, is avoid putting assistance before the tool. When you ask somebody if they need help before you've shared the link to GetCTC, we find it that most people, that adds an additional barrier for them. Asking for assistance can be hard and challenging, but by giving them the link directly and then offering assistance, you're going to be much more successful in reaching more people. And you can offer, like I said, you can offer assistance alongside the referral, but don't miss including the link to the actual tool itself. And then it's important to just know what you can and can't do. Whenever you're being asked a tax question or information you don't know, you should not be guessing the answer to that question. We have chat support available at Get Your Refund and GetCTC So that's a really great place to go if you're asked a question and just say, you know what, let's talk to the tax experts about this. Let's get some more information. Just want to encourage that. I know I'm way over time, so quickly go through the next few slides. So next slide. And so I've been mentioning some resources we have. Those resources are available at getctc.org/navigators. We will be continuing to update the resources that are available there throughout the summer and fall as more information becomes available about the types of assistance that people are interested in. Want to call out the chat assistance again. We also have office hours that are available. So as you're doing this work and you have some questions or you want to brainstorm, how are other people doing this? We encourage you to attend one of those office hours, which takes place on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And next slide. And just thank you. A lot of the information I know could feel somewhat overwhelming, but none of the things that I said today, or even that Jenny was sharing, is something that you're expected to memorize. We hope that you'll just know where the resources are in order to get the information that you need, which may be at the website, could be at emailing navigators@getyourrefund.org, joining our mailing list, and joining our office hours when you have questions. And with that, I think I'm handing it back over to Jenny.
I think I'm up actually, but thank you, Courtney. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Beebe with the Coalition on Human Needs and Partnership for America's Children. You've gotten a lot of information, and we really want to focus the rest of our time on how you can actually help families in your programs and in your communities get this money to which they're entitled. And so we can go to the next slide, please. So just very briefly, we, as Courtney has said, have learned a lot about what does work in outreach. And so much of this isn't going to be surprising to many of you, but we know that outreach works when it's integrated into your existing programs and communications. You all already know how to reach families as trusted messengers. And so continuing to put this information in programs and communications as you usually do. We know that families need to receive information in a language that they are comfortable in, that they understand, and receive it multiple times. As Courtney said, it's not enough just to sort of raise awareness, but you really have to point people to where they can claim this credit, in this case, likely GetCTC.org. And in a moment, Jenny's going to share a lot of great resources we have that can do just this. And again, as Courtney said, many families won't need that additional assistance. So it will really be supportive if you can design your outreach to support as needed, but not assume that everyone will need that same level of support. We can go to the next slide, please. We also know that among community partners, school districts, and government benefits agencies are among the most trusted sources of information. So if you're with one of those groups or have a relationship with an agency or district in your state, we really want to help provide you the resources so you can reach out to them and encourage them in joining you in this outreach. And then we know that text messages from schools and agencies and service providers have been especially effective, but that using a range of communications can be supportive as well. And again, we have all of these examples so that you don't have to create these from scratch. And then finally, we know that in addition to hearing from trusted community messengers, families may need to hear from tax, immigration, or family law experts to kind of help bolster this information. So we know we could talk here for a while, but that will mean much less to all of you who are working in communities and hearing from other community partners who have already been doing this work. So I'm really excited to have two community partners here today. And I think if Daniel, you're here, you can come on camera and I'll introduce you, and we can go ahead to our next slide, please, Zoe. Awesome. Are you there, Daniel?
I am, Julia, but it's not allowing me to click on the video.
Okay, great. Zoe, do you think you could just make sure Daniel can come on camera?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. It's
yeah, I think that our host will just have to, we'll have to let you do it.
Okay.
You should be able now.
There we go.
There you are. Perfect. Thank
All
you
right,
so
thank you
much,
very much.
Daniel. And I'll just quickly introduce Daniel. So Daniel Mojica is the director of the Parent Information Center at Chelsea Public Schools, which, as many of you may know, is a district outside of Boston with approximately 6,000 kids. I was really impressed by all of your wonderful work in the past months and year to do tax credit outreach to families in your district with the support of Find Your Funds collaboration. And as you can hear, Daniel's at school. I know this is a busy time for you, so just very grateful for you joining us. And we would love to hear about the outreach you did and what you've learned through that process.
Sure, of course. Thank you so much for having me. So the Chelsea Public Schools, as everyone knows, during the onset of COVID, Chelsea was hit pretty hard in Massachusetts. So we had to try to find other ways of communications, means to get information out to our parents and our families. And what we found that was very effective was text messaging. We originally, in years past, we would just do the robocalls, flyers to the home, but text messaging is something that's instantaneous. Parents get it right away. We can include links on there as well, which was very helpful. So when the Shaw Foundation reached out to me and to the Chelsea Public Schools to see how we can assist with the child tax credit, we kind of gathered central office and myself, and we said, how are we going to get this message out? And with the help of Sarah over at the Shaw Foundation, we decided that text messaging and also the robocalls would be the best way. It was a success. All the pieces were in place. So we did, in collaboration with the GBLS, the Greater Boston Legal Services, as well as La Colaborativa in Chelsea, which is a community-based organization that's been here for a number of years, very trusted within the community and the families in Chelsea. We found that it was that we received a great response and feedback from the families. So working with individuals at GBLS, Angela primarily, she received over 100 calls from the Chelsea Public School families. There was over 1,100 hits on the findyourfunds.org from our families, and it's just something that's something that was built. The trust was built, especially over the year and a half that we were kind of going back and forth with our families, helping them any way we can. Our teachers, our parent liaisons, our family liaisons, who establish these strong relationships. And once again, the relationships that we have with the community-based organizations throughout the city.
Thank you, Daniel. And Zoe did, okay, yeah. I don't know if we got the slide up for you, Daniel, and I think you said these numbers, but I wasn't sure if there's anything else you wanted to add to this piece.
Yeah, so we, with that being said, La Colaborativa had an event with lawyers in hand, so people can go there, ask questions, apply for ITIN numbers. So it was really kind of a full force push from all communities, all organizations involved to try to get these families these funds, which was great to see. It just makes our community stronger, and it builds that trust within the families. And a lot of it too, Chelsea's a small city. It's a 1.8 by 2 square miles, but we word of mouth is a big thing as well. A lot of families, a lot of small groups of people, pockets of people throughout the city. So say one family member applies for it and says, no, this is legit. Please go talk to Daniel down at the Parent Information Center. Go talk to someone over at La Colaborativa. We really kind of try to push that information out there. I think one of the most difficult things was getting everyone on the same page to push out the same message. So we wanted to make sure that we were training our family liaisons and my staff here at the Parent Information Center, principal clerks who parents trust and build relationships with, and they know what's going on. And then they said, oh no, I've never heard of that. What is that? So we want to make sure, yep, it's exactly what it is. This is how you get it. If you want any further information, these are the websites that you're going to go to. So I think having everybody on the same page, which could be difficult, especially during that period, it's still now to this day. It's something that's very, it was key to the success of this program.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Daniel, and to Superintendent Abita and your whole team for doing this work. I know schools have not had an easy time over the past months and years, so really appreciative of this leadership.
Thank you very much.
And I know Daniel will be staying on for the Q&A, and so please
Yes.
think of your outreach questions if you work in schools or connected to schools, and Daniel can help answer those. So
Absolutely.
very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next I want to introduce Estefania Melendez. Perfect, welcome. Who is a quality and career coach in the Child Care Services Division of Options for Learning, which is a nonprofit child care and early learning agency serving 15,000 children in Los Angeles County. So we're going from Massachusetts over to California, traveling the country with CTC outreach. And Estefania, we would love to hear about the outreach you've done and have planned with families, and maybe ways you've gotten creative in reaching families in your community.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, so I am here in California, Southern California, and we service the San Gabriel Valley, so somewhat of a smaller portion of LA County, but we were tasked with the outreach portion of this, and we, similar to Daniel mentioned, we had to get creative with our outreach services with the pandemic going on. Normally, we may have done more of the outreach of in person in the past, but we shifted gears. October was more of our learning and planning period. Since we are in the ECE field, childcare services, taxes were, for me personally, something that I did not feel comfortable with. So it was all of that learning and processing. What is it that I'm even sharing with the parents and providers? And what is it that I want them to trust me with? So that was what we did in our team in October. We continued with our email blast. We figured we already have these resources here with us. We have their emails. That's something that they're used to checking with how they had to adapt over the pandemic. So let's start there. And that was where we started. We shared an email blast on the information of CTC, the child tax credit, to all of our parents in our database. And then we continued with social media posts throughout November and December, mainly focusing on GetCTC. After December, we moved on to sharing more of that getyourrefund.org resource. Since the GetCTC wasn't live at the time, we didn't want to confuse parents, and so we shared Get Your Refund resources through our social media accounts, and we would do monthly posts. We had to work with our communications team to kind of figure out how can we do that, since we aren't in charge of the social media posting ourselves. We had to work with them, and we had so much support from our outside resources like Lightbox Collaborative. The coalition also helped us with getting all of the content that we would provide to the communications team. So we didn't have to create anything ourselves. They provided it for us. We just got the message out. And something that was really helpful for us was that I wasn't aware of is that we can boost posts. We can get the word out to more parents and families, not just the ones that follow our social media. So that's what the communications team did for us. They boosted our posts to reach more demographics. And so we extended it to LA County and Orange County throughout those months, just to reach more people. And towards the end of April, that's when we started doing our community outreach resource fairs. And here we finally got to talk to parents and be in the community and get some of those success stories. But here we shared flyers for getyourrefund.org with the QR code on the flyer itself. And these were trilingual flyers. So I figured that was something that worked for us in the community we serve because of the languages that we serve in our community. So we found that really helpful. but we also gave away little band-aids with get, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's claim your child tax credit, and it has the website GetCTC.org, and then our website also, just so they know that, you know, we're part of this also, like you can trust this. So the response that we got from parents is that they love the giveaway, and they're even going to share it with other families because it's a little band-aid case, and they shared kids are always getting hurt, and it's portable, so it was something that they found useful. And there we were able to get the success stories of some of the parents did receive the tax credit and how helpful it was for them throughout the pandemic year, that they were able to come out to these resource events because now they don't have to stress as much with finding how to pay for everything that their children need. So that was something that I found so heartwarming in our community outreach events. But that's a little bit about our outreach efforts. And I just want to thank everybody for their collaboration and support. They made it easy for us to be able to get that message out also. So thank you. I'll hand it back over to Julia.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you both for your wonderful words, and you're getting some praise for the giveaway in the chat. So whether Band-Aids or texts or emails, getting creative and reaching families how it's best. Here on the slides now, you'll see a newsletter sign up. You'll also see a link to where you can get many of these resources. We don't yet have a way to order Band-Aids, but it's something we can try to figure out. But a lot of great resources. And Daniel and Estefania, thank you both so much. And I'm going to pass it over to Jenny for our final portion. And if our speakers can stay on for the Q&A, or feel free to answer questions in the chat. Thank you both.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Daniel and Estefania. Those are great ideas. The Band-Aid is so cute, and I love that. Hopefully, y'all can hear me a little bit better with these earbuds. All right, I'm not seeing any complaints. So I will keep this portion short. Just wanted to share that we have updated our outreach resources on our resources hub. So you can go to taxoutreach.org/coronavirus. And we've really updated these materials so that they do direct to getctc.org, and they have that new deadline of about mid-November 2022 to file. And so within these resources, we have everything from messaging and earned media materials to a social media toolkit with graphics for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Instagram stories if you want to get creative. We have call and text scripts and newsletter copy, and a flyer and mailer. And so if you go to the next slide, we'll see. I just wanted to share an example of the kind of messaging that we have. You can go ahead and copy and paste and adapt it to your needs. Next slide. Also wanted to share the poster that we have. So if you're thinking about integrating child tax credit outreach into your work, hopefully these materials can make it a little easier. The flyer has been updated and translated too. So it's available in Chinese, French, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And I will be uploading those translated versions onto the toolkit today too. So you should be able to find those later today. Next slide. Again, wanted to just share a couple examples of what the social media graphics look like to give you an idea, but don't need to go through this. Maybe we can just like kind of go through the next few slides quickly, just so folks can, yeah, just get some ideas for how they can use these materials. So next slide. Yep. So just an example of some of the text scripts that we have that have been proven to be effective for families. Next slide. Again, we do have that phone message that you can use. Next slide. Yes, and of course, we do have many materials that answer child tax credit related questions. Next slide. And then let's actually just skip to the end because we don't have a ton of time. We have about 8 minutes now for Q&A, and I want to give folks time to ask and answer questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Roxy, and we will be sharing out links to these resources in a following email. So thanks, y'all.
So thank you everyone so much for your participation in this training event. Thank you to all of our presenters as well. As Jenny mentioned, we do have some time for some Q&A. Many of your questions have been answered in the chat already, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. If you would like to ask a question by just sharing it verbally, you can raise your hand and we'll try to unmute you. We'd love to prioritize any questions for our organizational presenters, Daniel and Estefania. So please let us know what questions you have. And while we're waiting on questions to come in, we want to let you know that we would love to receive your feedback on this event. So we will be dropping a link in the chat for a quick survey, and you will also receive it in the follow-up email. Your feedback is really important to help us know how we can make these types of learning experiences as useful for you as possible. So I will start with one question. Courtney, I believe that you may be able to help answer this question, and that is, what if parents had another family member claim their children and they didn't file and they weren't employed? Would they be eligible for the child tax credit, and should they actually file?
Yeah, Roxy, thank you for that. That's a pretty common question we get. So there are a couple of things to consider with this. One, just making sure they're eligible for it. So in order to claim a child for the child tax credit, they typically must have lived with you for over half the year. It sounds like in this scenario, it's a child. So, the relationship status would be met, all of those things. If somebody else claimed them, they could not use the GetCTC tool to claim them because they'll get a reject that says their dependent's already been claimed. The only way that they can go forward to claim this is by filing a paper tax return, which means they have to print out and mail their tax return to the IRS. When they do that, the IRS will be asking, will basically be investigating who has the strongest claim to that child and be asking for further verification based on that. Once the IRS determines who is the qualifying person, so if let's say it's the parents that are the qualifying parent for that child, the other folks who already previously claimed them will have to repay any of their child tax credit that they received. Plus, depending on how it was done and if it seemed like a general mistake versus actually fraud, there's different repercussions based on that. So usually a 20% penalty on top of that. Plus, they're going to have to fill out additional forms in the future whenever claiming a child. And so what I always stop to do when I'm talking to an individual in this situation is asking, do they know who claimed their child? Can they talk to that person and try to handle it outside of going through an IRS thing that will cause a lot of red flags and a lot of issues? We know family dynamics are very complicated. Maybe this person gave, a grandparent or an aunt permission to claim their children in the past because there was no benefit in doing so. And if that's the case, my guess is don't automatically tell them to file a paper return. Sometimes when people do that, they don't know the process that they're opening up. But if their child's been claimed incorrectly by somebody else and they've never given permission for that, this is a process that can be long, but is worthwhile because it stops the person from filing with that dependent in the future or makes it much harder for them to do so. So this is one of those really challenging situations where there needs to be more conversation. We've tried to make the message on GetCTC as clear as possible of saying, if you want to move forward, here's how you do it. Here are some other considerations, but I think it's just important to get a bit more information from that individual to know what they want to do going forward.
Thank you so much, Courtney. So we have just a few minutes left. We did see that David had their hand raised, so we'll take David, and then we will come back and ask the question that Gabriella put in the chat. So David, please share.
Hi, I'll be really quick. This question is for Courtney. For customers who are filing on the GetCTC tool this year, if they are filing through FSA service or through VITA next year, will this GetCTC return will that count as them getting their adjusted gross income, or will there be a way for them to get their adjusted gross income from this tool, or should they claim that they didn't file a return for if they're filing next year, and if they file then GetCTC? Thank you. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, David, that does. So for those of you who aren't aware, when you file your own tax return, you have to enter last year's adjusted gross income in order to e-file it. And so they will be able, when they use GetCTC, they will be able to download and save or print their tax return that's filed. So they'll have that record to use next year. But what I found curious was the IRS regulations this year was instead of putting the $1 adjusted gross income as it's been for the last 2 years, it's actually 0 AGI. So just for you next year, David, that the AGI that's being filed with these tax returns is 0. Hope that's helpful.
Thanks so much.
Okay, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that claiming the child tax credit does not change any public benefits that someone may receive. So sometimes people are concerned about, will they lose their housing benefits, or will they lose their TANF benefits? And the answer is no, they will not. So please make sure to incorporate that into your outreach efforts. And our final question for Daniel and Estefania is, did you find messaging that appeals or resonates to non-filers? How about messaging that appeals to mixed status families? Do you have any learnings that you can share about this?
I think I can start. Something that we noticed with even just getting their attention was the images we used tied to the message need to reflect. And this is where it gets touchy because mixed statuses, we don't want to assume that this is how they look, but we don't want the image that's tied to the message was important to get their attention. So if they saw what would be a quote unquote affluent environment or background or people, they may just skip that social media post and not even assume that it's theirs. So grabbing their attention was something that was important in the image that they saw. So images of different families. So like even a grandparent and a child. So the image to capture their attention was something that I noticed was important. Just for them to even read what it is that we're trying to share. And that's something that I noticed. With the actual messaging itself, that's where it got tricky. I can pass it on to Daniel if he has any other insight.
No, I agree. So the tools that were given to us, the resources that we use for social media, they were different. We try to mix it up a bit. But I think that one key piece, one messaging piece that we used was that this would not affect their immigration status. So we do have a lot of undocumented residents here in Chelsea, and I think that they were just nervous, like anything asking for assistance, putting their name on anything, a piece of paper. If they're in the process of becoming a citizen or requesting their status, they don't feel comfortable with it. So that's another piece of gaining their trust. We're not going to put you in a situation that's going to damage any of your paperwork that you have filed to become a citizen. So that piece of information, and just kind of reiterating that, having lawyers on hand from the Greater Boston Legal Services so they can kind of talk them through the process and saying, hey, we have your back if anything should happen. I think that was a key piece to receiving all these calls and being able to answer these questions that these families had.
And I'm sorry if I can add one last piece. I think something that I might add that we noticed also is the word non-filers was something that kind of even steered them away. So the message of if you haven't filed yet instead of like a non-filer was something that was a little softer, and they were more open to hearing.
Thank you both for sharing your experiences. Again, it's really helpful to hear, and we want to thank everyone for joining today. We are about to wrap up. If you have questions that we didn't get to ask, please feel free to reach out and we can follow up with you directly. I would like to open it up to all of the presenters just to share any last final remarks that you want people to know.
Thanks, Roxy. One thing I forgot to mention during my presentation was that by filling out our Navigator outreach partner form and getting on our newsletter, is that you can request what is a unique URL. So a unique site that you can, or a unique URL that sends people to GetCTC, where we can then track your outreach efforts. So we'll be able to tell you how many people came to GetCTC, how many people submitted a return, and that return was accepted. We luckily have been able to work with IRS Spec to make sure that VITA programs can use that information to count towards their number of clients served. So if you are a VITA organization that is going to be doing GetCTC outreach, make sure to request a unique URL so you can report those numbers to the IRS. But everybody can use it for their tracking as well.
Fantastic. Well, if no one else has anything to share, thank you again for your participation. Please look out for the follow-up email that will include the recording and the slides in English and Spanish, as well as a link to our survey. Thank you.